you depressed? Do you like being devastated? Do you often sit outside, pondering the existence of a love that never was? Then you have come to the right place. Hi, my name is Danny, your local alt-dressing neurodivergent book reader, and I saw a book making the rounds on TikTok recently, one that I am here to talk about, titled If He Had Been With Me. This novel initially piqued my interest after seeing it in a TikTok titled Books That Will Make You Cry. But was it cry-worthy? Let's talk about it. This video, for convenience sake, will be separated into 4 sections: characters, plot, writing, and controversies. Now without further ado, let's get started. To start off, our titular cast of characters is our protagonist, Autumn. We watch Autumn grow up from a preteen to a young adult, and in this time she goes from popular girl to very weird 2013-esque hipster girl. I love Autumn, actually, because I feel like she is a realistic depiction of a teenager. She is very interesting. She likes to write. She wants to be a writer. She's already made these sort of fantasies in her head where she moves to New York and she becomes a published author. And she wears a tiara every single day of high school. And we're gonna get into this in the controversy section, but I felt like there was a lot of people kind of dogging on Autumn for doing stuff like this, like wearing the tiara every day, or supposedly being smart but making bad choices. We'll talk about that when we get there. The tiara thing, though, I'll go ahead and address now, is something I would have done in high school. But there is a part in this book where she's throwing up. She has to hold on to her tiara to keep it from dropping in the toilet. I just feel like that's so iconic. And if that doesn't summarize my entire high school experience, I don't know what does. I like Autumn. I feel like she is relatable. For the dislikes, I would say that there is sometimes that she makes decisions that upset me. For example, some of the people that she hangs out with and continues to hang out with throughout the book, which we will talk about later. But I would say that I understand that at the end of the day, she's a teenager, and teenagers make shitty choices all the time. I generally like her as a protagonist, and I actually found her more interesting as a protagonist than some of the other books that I've tried to read recently. As for the next character, Finny. Finny, or Phineas, is Autumn's best friend since diapers. Their mothers were best friends, which we will talk about in a second, and they have basically just grown up together. Both of them have daddy issues, and both of them they have this sort of weird relationship, especially as they get older and sort of part ways, where they were close at one point until about middle school, and then they sort of grew apart. And in high school they have these interactions every once in a while that's hey, we're childhood best friends, but we don't super associate with one another. And Finny is very dorky. He is a dork in middle school, but then kind of becomes a jock or a preppy kid in high school. But most of the time, his personality is fairly consistent. He is shown to be a caring person, a kind person, and a somewhat dorky person. So I personally like Finny. A lot of people like Finny. He seems like a generally nice guy in a non-derogatory way. As for the next character, Jamie is Autumn's boyfriend for a long, upsettingly long part of this book. I do not like Jamie. I don't have a whole lot of likes for him, other than that maybe he's a realistic teenage boy who might be I don't know, someone who hides a pew-pew under their coat. I just do not get good vibes from Jamie. Every time that Autumn's
that's mine.
And he commands the space every time that he's in it. She's so proud of him. I'm just girl, get up. Girl, get up! Because I do not like this man whatsoever. The stuff that he says is just weird. He's
I like you feminine, and we're gonna have a house and kids, and
just knowing what ends up happening between those two also, I did not even, like, I just felt like it wasn't convincing me. This whole book, she was trying to convince me that this man was okay. And I was like, he's not. I just have a vibe. I caught a vibe. He's weird. So, I don't know. I just had very rotten vibes from this man. I did not like him. He is very much giving, I don't know, Joker vibes. Like, Joker-esque energy. And I was like, you can keep that. The next person is Sasha. There is sort of an overarching friend group. I'm not going to go over all of the entire friend group because the truth is that they're not as important to the story as these characters are. Sasha is probably the least important person on this list. She is Autumn's best friend. She's shown to be like someone who followed her out of the popular clan into this like hipster Tumblr group. And she is like a tomboy. She likes to wear like army bomber jackets and, I don't know, combat boots and whatever. She is also kind of bad news. Definitely girly was kind of giving me vibes as well. Just know that I am not a huge fan of Sasha. I mean, it's cool that she's like a tomboy, but I don't have a whole lot of likes about her. She honestly doesn't have that much of a personality for much of this book. So the last important characters that we are introduced to are called, quote unquote, the mothers. And the mothers are Finney's mother and Autumn's mother. And they are two incredibly different people who just happen to be neighbors who are both giving birth around the same time, and that's why Finney and Autumn are best friends. So, Autumn's mother married her high school sweetheart, who is incredibly absent as a father. He goes on like business trips and corporation trips like all the time. He's just very absent. But she is like a very put together person. She is, however, very, very ill. She's a very mentally ill person. She sometimes has like these depressive episodes that are exacerbated by her absent husband. But most of the time she is like businesswoman in heels and khaki casual, period. Like office siren to the nines. And she just has like, her whole entire life is together, right? Like she's just a picture perfect life mom. This is juxtaposed with Finney's mom, who is an art teacher who like ended up having Finney way too young with like this billionaire guy who obviously didn't want to have nothing to do with that. So he like bought her a house in a nice neighborhood to keep her quiet and sends her like $1 million a month or something. So they just have incredibly different lives. Like obviously with like Finney's mom, like she goes through boyfriends like crazy, and then like with Autumn's mom, like she's always, you know, having these episodes with her husband, but they are like best friends and they're always there for each other no matter what. And it's just very iconic. Their relationship is very iconic. I feel like both of these characters, I really love them, but especially Finney's mom. Like I just feel like that's just awesome. She's just such a creative soul, and I don't know, I just really enjoy them. There's not a whole lot of characters that I don't like. I will say where she kind of dropped the ball with me, which we'll get more into it on the writing part, is where I do feel like to an extent she wanted us to like Jamie, and again that just never happened for me. It was never gonna happen.
I never found you funny. I never found you entertaining. I never found you smart. I just found you annoying.
Because I did not like Jamie at any point in time. Like, I was like, from the start, no. But without further ado, let's get into the plot. The plot. The beginning of this story, the beginning of this book, starts with a harrowing scene. Finney's girlfriend. Out on the street. They just, like, it was raining. They hit something. She flew out the fucking windshield on the road. Finney gets out of the car. Our narrator, Autumn, says, "I wish she wouldn't have done that." What happened to Finney? Oh my god, he's dead. We pretty much know right off the bat that Finney is fucking dead. Look at this lollipop. Does this look like the lollipop representation of someone who's alive? The answer to that is no. Finney is dead. Starting with that information. What happened? What was, as she puts at one point, the story underneath the story? what happened. Let's start from the beginning. The mothers, they're pregnant. Finney is born. A week later, Autumn. So their birthdays are always celebrated together every single year. From birth to like 12, they are like bestie friends. They do everything together. They literally just are always hanging out. They're like sleeping in the same bed until the mothers are like, that's weird. And so by the time that middle school rolls around, they go their separate ways. What happened? Well, Autumn became a popular girl, and Finney is hanging out with a bunch of geeks. Those groups of people, they just do not hang out together. Despite this, Finney is still fighting for Autumn. He is still riding or dying for Autumn. By the time that they get to high school, they've split ways so much because of one unspoken incident that happens between them. Cue freshman year. Sasha and Autumn do not get into the cheerleading squad. The other girls that they were friends with do. There's a new girl in town, and this becomes Finney's new girlfriend as he gradually tries to forget who? Autumn. This is set your scene. As the years start of high school, which this book pretty much takes us through Autumn's entire high school experience, she decides on who her group will be. She is different, okay? She is not like other girls, right? But in a way that isn't overly obnoxious. She is ripped jeans, tiara wearing, every single day, emo Tumblr girl who probably would listen to 1975. She's hanging out with all of these hipster kids, okay? And they're all kikiing. They're all sitting on the steps at lunch. They're kikiing together. She is very different, she states, from Finney, who is now a jock, dating a cheerleader. Upsetting, betrayal. They don't really talk anymore. Every once in a while he comes over to like steal eggs out of their fridge. They don't really talk anymore beyond these fleeting moments. This entire book is essentially a recollection from like memories and also, but mostly, Autumn's entire high school experience, like I said, from back to front, like a little bit after graduation. We just basically go through this entire story, and we'll talk about this again in like the controversies, the critiques that I have heard from other people. But some people don't like that most of Finney and Autumn's interactions are very fleeting. They don't like that. They wish that it was more focused on them. We'll talk about it later. But just know that that is primarily how the book is set up. It is a lot of content and information about Autumn's life and how she is developing, how her relationships are developing, her friendships are developing, her relationship with her parents and the world around her is developing. And then in between those little moments are like Finney. Finney again. What's going on? What's going on between Autumn and Finney? We just have these little fleeting moments, and there's so much tension. There's so much questioning going on in Autumn's head. She says, what do I do? What do I do? We're both in relationships, but I think I love Finney. What? I would have never guessed. I guessed from the moment this book started. But that's what kept me reading, because I needed to see these two people. It was just enough interaction for me to need to see these two people get together. I needed it to happen. Like it was like a primal urge. I read this book in 2 days. Like literally, and when I say 2 days, I mean like 8 hours, because it was like overnight. Because I needed to know. I needed to know what happened between these two. After this all happens, Jamie and Autumn have been together for like 4 years. Sylvie and Finney break up, make up, whatever. They're made up right now. But she's all the way in Europe. So this summer, the mothers have said, Autumn, we know you have clinical depression. but we are not allowing you to be depressed over this man. Get out. And you know what? I kind of support that, because I would not want to be depressed over this man either. That would just be embarrassing. We're gonna have Finney come over, and we're gonna have him babysit you every single day this summer. Finney and Autumn just spend like every day of the summer after graduating together, and they're just kikiing together like every day all the time. And that's when so many things come out. The instance that separated them both was when Finney kissed her, and she said, "Did you love me? Or did you just want to know what it was like to kiss a girl?" And he said, "I loved you." I would have never guessed. Autumn says, "I love you too." And then they're together. They're together for one holy day. He says, "I'm gonna break up with my girlfriend as soon as she comes back from Europe tomorrow, and we're just gonna be kissing the rest of the summer." But little did he know, that would never come. So, Finney leaves. He's going on a car ride with Sylvie, his girlfriend who just got back from Europe. And while they're in the car, they get into an argument. It's raining. Finney hits something. She flies out the windshield because she didn't even have no seatbelt on. He gets out of the car. He's trying to check on her. He sticks his hand in a puddle that also has a live wire in it, and he dies. He dies. He literally is electrocuted to death, as if being smoked by the gods. So, this is what happens. He did. He's dead. So, after this happens, Autumn is like devastated. The mother's devastated. Everyone devastated. How could this happen? How could we let it happen to Finney? Autumn says, "This life is not worth living." And she unalives herself, or tries to. She wakes up in the hospital. She's not dead. She is not unalived. She's not expired. She is not unsubscribed from life. She is pregnant. And that's where the book ends. Y'all, it was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster from start to finish. There was so many things that happened in this book. Let's go on to what I liked and disliked about this plot. This plot was, I would say, interesting. I would say definitely interesting, definitely a good concept, because obviously it kept me reading. I literally, like I said, read this book in like 8 hours. I feel like this was a good way to set up the book. I also felt like there were times that this book could be very poetic. I feel like there was a lot of foreshadowing that I didn't struggle to pick up on, which I don't think is a bad thing. It wasn't like spelled out for me, but as someone who reads a lot, I was like, that's interesting. I'm gonna note that. And everything that I pretty much noted, like, it led up to something. And like, again, like she said, I was very interested and invested in the story underneath of the story. I needed Finney and Autumn to end up together. It was just the way it was. Like, I just needed it to happen. How did I feel about the writing? Let's get into it. The writing in this book is, I would say that I like it. I enjoy the style of writing. I don't think it's too serious. I don't think it takes itself too seriously, if that makes sense, more or less. And I would say that I generally enjoy it. Like I said, I enjoy the foreshadowing. I think that it wasn't too obvious, but I also feel like that's like a good thing. It wasn't too discreet either, so much so that I would like have to read back through the book to actually see it. And I think as for my dislikes, I think that Autumn is supposed to be a writer. So tell me why, when she, at the end of that book, or at the end of this book, writes this whole entire story that she's been hiding from Finney, and it's obviously because it's about him, and she finally shares it with him. We get like an excerpt of this. Maybe it was just supposed to be summed up. I would not believe for a second that any English professors were begging Autumn to be in their class. That was probably the worst thing that I've ever read. You could make it better, even if it was just brief, even if it was just like, maybe she just made references to what she wrote and not wrote it all out and it was so bad it was literally worse than Wattpad fanfiction. I was like, this is the part where you lost me. And I was like, hopefully this was not meant to be the actual piece that Autumn wrote. It was bad. It was bad. It was embarrassing. I wouldn't want Finney to read that either. I wouldn't come back in there. I would literally stick my hand in an electrified puddle before I let Finney read that. That was terrible. That was 0 out of 10. I think something else that I didn't particularly like about this writing is, honestly, I felt like the characters and the plot was believable, especially the fact that they're not friends anymore at the end of high school, like never related to something more. I was not friends with any of the friend groups that I was friends with in high school. I feel like that's just realistic, unfortunately. I hope you all keep your high school friends. I think it's awesome if you do, but I did not. I think that a lot of the plot points and a lot of the characters were realistic. I feel like they read very much as teenagers, but I will say I disliked some of the more unrealistic plot points. And by this, I mean that there is a plot point that I didn't really go over because, again, it's not super important to the story underneath the story, where one of the girls that Autumn is friends with becomes pregnant. She's literally pregnant after sleeping with this guy like one single time. That being said, Autumn only slept with Finney like one single time. Why is she pregnant? And it's like, this just doesn't happen that often in real life. It felt ridiculous that the only 2 characters really who've slept together, I mean there's like one other character, but the only 2 characters really who've slept with someone unprotected end up pregnant like immediately. It's like, that could be how things work in real life. Oftentimes it isn't. So I just felt like that was unrealistic. Number 2, the way that Finney died. So unrealistic. You can't just have made him die in a car crash. I honestly thought that it was going to be like Haunting of Hill House when I read the first excerpt. I thought he was going to get out of the car and get hit by another car. I honestly feel like that would have been more believable than the whole electrocuted in a puddle when he reached down to see if Sylvie was okay. Like, convoluted death. That's psychotic. That's crazy. That is one of those insane deaths. But I digress. Other than that, I actually really liked the writing of this book. Like I said, I think it came off as very realistic. Like, there's a lot of times that adults try to write teenagers and they fail so horribly and drastically, and you can tell like that this person does not know how teenagers think or act at all. But I would not say that this book is succumbing to those stereotypes. Some of the controversies and negative opinions about this book are that, number 1, we kind of talked about it in the beginning, Autumn is a pick-me girl or a not like other girls girl. I personally feel like, yes, she is a hipster. Yes, she is, like I said earlier, Tumblr-esque girl. I wouldn't necessarily say that that makes her a pick-me girl. I think that she just was trying to figure herself out. I don't necessarily think that she thought she was better than the cheerleader girls. And I don't think that she tried to make a big deal out of being different. A big theme that she kind of talks about in this book is that everyone had like called her beautiful like all her life. I know it's probably a very like manic pixie dream girl, not like other girls girl thing to be like pretty and also not cool at the same time. But she talked about how everyone like her whole life had only like ever said that she was super beautiful, she was super pretty, and she said like, I just didn't want people to keep recognizing me for that only. Like I said, she has dreams of being a writer. She wants to be recognized for something beyond that. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that she comes off as a confident person at all, or like she thinks that, again, like she's better than any other girls. And I feel like there were I got all of these opinions off like Goodreads reviews, by the way. But I feel like this book was very aware of itself, especially for the time, because I'm pretty sure it was written in 2013. And some of the points that I'm talking about are like she mentions this whole scene where it's New Year's and her friends are over and all her hipster friends are out banging their pots and pans, which is like this whole tradition that she and her family did on like New Year's. And also at Finney's house next door, they're also having a party, and all of his preppy friends come outside and they're banging their pots and pans, and it's like a competition between the two to see which one is better, which one is having more fun. And this is mentioned like several times. Like, I just feel like Autumn is actually a very reflexive person, and she mentions we both, like both of our groups, need to feel like we are better than the other. It's not, oh, these preppy kids aren't as cool as us, or like the other way around. Like, it's just we both feel the need to feel like we are better than each other, right? So I feel like, again, like that's very reflective, especially for the time where it would have been easiest to just say F popular kids or whatever. I feel like that's just very insightful. Another plot point that really ticked people off, I kind of get it. To be fair, she didn't really have to do it, but also, again, like I guess I kind of get it. Sylvie, Finney, and Autumn sleep together before Sylvie and Finney are broken up. This is exactly how Jamie and Autumn's relationship ended, because Sasha slept with Jamie while Jamie and Autumn were still together. And Autumn is really pressed about it. She does not want to speak to either of them over it, understandably. But then people point out that, okay, but you just turned around and did the same thing to Sylvie. She mentions this in the book. Like I said, like I feel like this is, again, like she's a reflective person. I don't think that she excuses herself just because of that reason. She does make a comment about how that was pretty much exactly what had happened or had transpired in her past relationship. Not that she gives like a ton of insight on it, which you could complain about that. I feel like that's fair. But she does mention it. This book is, that's why I said I feel like it's aware of itself, like in tropes and things as well. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily think that. I will say that I saw some critiques of Autumn in the way that she is apparently meant to be smart but still makes bad choices. So I saw this in a Goodreads review that was like,
she's supposed to be really smart, but she stays with this guy and she wants to get married to him and have kids, and she dumps all her dreams for him, and she is, he's dictating what she wears, and that's not, smart at all to let your boyfriend do that. And
all of this stuff that people were saying, oh, and she
wants to have like a family and kids just like her mom, but like her parents end up getting divorced, so like why does she want to do that?
And so I would say to that, again, Autumn is a teenager. I was also thought of as a very smart kid growing up. I had like honors, magna cum laude, whatever, honors classes, this, that, and the third. It did not mean that I made smart decisions 100% of the time. I still made bad decisions because when you're young like that, there's just things that you don't know without experiencing them. And I wouldn't say that I think that she's not smart. I honestly feel like that can get into some very like victim blaming territory, which I'm not super comfortable with. So I don't necessarily think that that's a legitimate thing to say, like, oh, you're not smart because you were in this relationship that was toxic. Like, it's not her fault. It's not her fault that she was in that relationship or whatever, or that she made those decisions. Every kid just wants to be happy, and at the time, it really seems like she thought that that was the best decision. It wasn't, but at the time, it's what she thought, and I'm sure that many people have been in the same scenario. Ridiculous characters. Again, I thought these characters were very believable. Messes, all of them. They were all messes. They were all interesting. They were all unique. I felt very interested in these characters. I feel like they were realistic. No one was like untouchable or anything like that. Yeah, I feel like these characters were not super ridiculous. A lot of people were upset about the lack of plot. I do get that. If you are really upset by the fact that they are not talking nonstop from page to page, then I get that. It doesn't happen. Like she says time and time again, it's the story underneath the story. So it is many pieces strewn about and all kind of come together at the end. So if you don't like the constant or the lack of constant relationship development, then maybe this book is not for you. So my final thoughts and my rating on the book is probably a 3.5 out of 5, which is about what it has on Goodreads. I really liked this book. Did I cry? Yes, I did. I didn't cry when Finney died. I did cry just a little. Not as many tears as Song of Achilles, but I did cry when she talked about envisioning what Finney would say if she tried to take her life again after surviving the first time. That was heartbreaking to me. But why did I give it a 3.5 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5? The lack of plot. They didn't interact enough for me. I do feel like it could be made more interesting through more interaction between the two. So I would kind of say that I think that that's a valid point. The somewhat unbelievable plot points, which I mentioned back when I talked about the plot, those were probably the most upsetting things to me, because again, like, that is when I told my boyfriend that, like, he could not believe his ears. He was like, that is probably the dumbest way that I've ever heard of somebody dying in like a book. And I agree, like, it was very out there. It's not really realistic. It kind of took me out of the moment too, because I was like, what the fuck? Should I read the next one? That was the last thing I had on here. Should I read the next one? If any of you all have read the next one, I think it has better reviews than this one, I'm not gonna lie. If any of you all have read the next one, let me know how it is and let me know if I should read it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to follow me on any of my other social media platforms, they will be listed down below. I'm going to try and start uploading more consistently because I did graduate, so it's not like I got anything to do. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll try to upload more regularly, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!